When news broke that Terence "Bud" Crawford was moving up to face Canelo Álvarez at super middleweight, the boxing world stopped in its tracks. This wasn't just another big fight announcement. This was a seismic event. Fans, pundits, and fighters instantly began weighing in, not just because of the skill involved, but because of the sheer audacity of Crawford's leap. From 147 to 168 pounds, he was jumping 3 divisions to take on one of the most dominant fighters of the last decade. And the reactions from some of the sport's biggest voices? They've been nothing short of fascinating. The buzz really picked up when Joe Rogan, on his own show, was asked who he liked in the fight. Without hesitation, Rogan replied, "Crawford." He explained his choice, saying he's been a massive Crawford fan for years, calling him the best switch hitter since Marvin Hagler. Rogan admired the way Crawford could seamlessly move from orthodox to southpaw, confusing opponents who never quite knew which stance he'd attack from next. In Rogan's eyes, that adaptability is one of Crawford's deadliest weapons. He also added that Crawford is the type of fighter who thrives on challenges. Tell him he can't do something, and he'll want to prove you wrong. But Rogan didn't shy away from acknowledging the danger. Canelo, he warned, is a powerhouse. "I just hope he's big enough to keep that dude off him," Rogan said, noting how hard Canelo can hit. Rogan drew attention to the size gap, pointing out that Canelo is naturally stronger and more comfortable at the weight. Even so, he believes Canelo's not the same combination puncher he once was in his younger days, leaning now more on single, heavy shots. In Rogan's view, that change, along with signs of Canelo slowing down, could open a window for Crawford. Rogan's guest during that episode, legendary boxing commentator Jim Lampley, shared the intrigue. They discussed how rare it is for fighters to train purely for skill without heavy weightlifting, recalling an earlier era when many champions avoided weights entirely. In Crawford's case, Rogan marveled at his technical discipline and footwork, which he said could be the key to negating Canelo's physical edge. From there, the conversation moved into the bigger picture. Rogan talked about the influence of Saudi Arabian investment in boxing, hinting that their deep pockets might be the reason this fight could actually happen sooner rather than later. And when asked straight up if Crawford could beat Canelo, Rogan doubled down, "I think he could." Crawford himself has addressed the size question head-on. Appearing on Rogan's podcast, he recalled his fight with Errol Spence Jr., explaining that everything fans saw on fight night was the result of countless hours of drilling in the gym. As for the weight, Crawford shrugged off the idea that bigger automatically means stronger. "He might be bigger than me," Crawford said of Canelo, "but big don't mean stronger." He even shared the story of how an injury to his right hand years ago forced him to develop his left to the point where, eventually, it became stronger and more accurate than his right. Veteran trainer Teddy Atlas has looked at the matchup as a classic battle of size versus speed. In his breakdown, Atlas noted that Canelo brings raw power and experience at the higher weights, but Crawford may have the upper hand in agility, timing, and ring IQ. He compared the fight to Manny Pacquiao's upset of Oscar de la Hoya, reminding fans that great fighters can neutralize size with skill and strategy. While Atlas admitted Canelo has been dominant in the heavier divisions, he called Crawford very, very special, the kind of fighter who can overcome physical disadvantages with sheer craft and mental sharpness. Atlas also hinted that Canelo might be slightly overrated in some circles, not because he isn't elite, but because Crawford's greatness is rooted in more than just resume. "It's in his mind, it's in his makeup, it's in where he came from," Atlas said. "Somebody has to prove to me they can break Crawford's will." Meanwhile, Crawford's physical transformation has been turning heads. Coming up from 154, he's bulked to nearly 185 pounds in training, still lean and defined. Strength coach Rob Arasta, however, has sounded a note of caution. "Packing on muscle that quickly can come at a cost," Arasta warned, particularly in speed and stamina. The challenge for Crawford's team will be to hold on to his signature quickness while adding the mass needed to deal with Canelo's strength. And there's another wrinkle. Arasta posed the question, what if Canelo comes in lighter? Instead of trying to outweigh Crawford by 20 pounds, perhaps he trims down to stay sharp and match Crawford's speed. It's a tactical possibility that could make the fight even more intriguing. Coach Greg Hackett doesn't see a knockout win for Crawford as realistic under today's 12-round rules. Canelo's too tough, too seasoned, Hackett argued, and Crawford lacks the single punch power to drop him. But Hackett still envisions Crawford putting on a boxing clinic, winning through skill and tactics. He pointed to Crawford's disciplined approach against Spence as the type of performance needed, one where you can't afford mistakes and can't let the opponent bully you. Andre Ward, the undefeated former champion, has perhaps given the most direct endorsement of Crawford. Ward said he wouldn't bet against Crawford against anybody right now, weight jump or not. To Ward, someone has to prove they can break Crawford mentally, and no one has done it yet. Dmitry Bivol, the man who beat Canelo at light heavyweight, has also weighed in. Bivol called Crawford amazing, saying young fighters should study him as a blueprint for boxing fundamentals. While Bivol still respects the weight class gap, he admires Crawford's skills enough to believe he has a real shot. Bernard Hopkins took a slightly different angle, reflecting on Crawford's destruction of Spence. Hopkins claimed that kind of punishment can take years off a fighter's career, 4 fights worth in Spence's case. In Hopkins' mind, Crawford is the type of fighter who changes opponents permanently. Tim Bradley, the former champion turned commentator, puts Crawford's chances at about 30 to 40%. He sees the skill gap favoring Crawford, but the size and power gap leaning heavily toward Canelo. Bradley also warned that Crawford's stubbornness could backfire. If he tries to trade punches with Canelo, he could get caught. Still, Bradley is unimpressed with Canelo's recent performances, saying they haven't been wow moments. Trainer Robert Garcia has noticed something else about Canelo. He doesn't go for the knockout anymore. Garcia believes Canelo now fights to do just enough to win, conserving his body for the long haul. This, Garcia argued, is why Canelo hasn't been stopping opponents like he used to. It's not that he can't, but that he chooses not to push for the finish. On the opposite end of the spectrum, rising star Vergil Ortiz Jr. believes Canelo wins clearly. Ortiz respects Crawford's intellect and skill, but says moving from 147 to 168 against someone like Canelo is too big a leap. To Ortiz, adding weight isn't the same as belonging in the division. He acknowledged that if Crawford does somehow win, he'd put him at the very top of his all-time list, but he still leans toward Canelo because of the size, strength, and overall physicality. And then there's the tension between the fighters themselves. When Canelo said Crawford would find out what happens when a good fighter jumps up to face a great fighter, Crawford fired back without hesitation. So that means you're a good fighter and Dmitry Bivol is a great fighter, right? Every time you stepped up, you lost. That jab was more than just trash talk. It was a sharp reminder of Canelo's loss to Bivol and proof that Crawford isn't intimidated. As the fight draws near, the predictions remain split. On one side, you have those like Rogan, Ward, Bivol, and Atlas, who see Crawford's skill, adaptability, and mental toughness as enough to overcome the size gap. On the other, voices like Ortiz and Arasta emphasize that natural size, strength, and experience at 168 could be decisive. In the middle are analysts like Bradley and Hackett, who give Crawford a chance but warn against underestimating what it takes to beat Canelo in his own weight class. No matter which way you lean, one thing is certain, this isn't just another fight. It's a clash of styles, of weight classes, of legacies. It's the pound-for-pound king daring to step into the lion's den of a bigger, stronger champion. And whether you think Crawford will outthink and outmaneuver Canelo, or whether you believe Canelo will overpower and outlast Crawford, you can't deny the magnitude of the challenge. The camps are ready. The opinions are in, and when the bell rings, we'll finally see if skill, speed, and willpower can conquer size, strength, and raw power. Until then, the debate will rage, and the boxing world will count down the days. Because no matter the outcome, this is the kind of fight that reminds us why we watch, the kind where history is made in real time, and where one man's daring could change the sport forever.